Today's daily LeetCode problem of the day is find array state after k multiplication operations part 1, number 3264. For this problem we are given an integer array called nums, an integer k, and an integer called multiplier. We need to perform a k amount of operations on our nums array. In each operation we are going to find the minimum value x in nums. If there are multiple, we'll select the one that appears first and replace that value with that value times the multiplier value. We'll then return an integer array denoting the final state of nums after performing all the operations. If we look at example 1 here, all we simply have to do is go through each minimum value and multiply it by our multiplier. So we start with 1 as our smallest value, we multiply that by the 2, and that gets us 2. 2 is then our next smallest, and it comes first before the next 2, so we multiply that by 2, getting 4. And then our operation 3, we have the one that multiplied to a 2, that is now the minimum, so we multiply by 2 again to get 4. 3 is then the minimum, we multiply by 2 to get 6. And then the first 4 is then the minimum again, which we multiply by 2, which equals 8. And that is 5 operations, since k is equal to 5. So how are we going to put that into code? To solve this problem, here's our plan. We're going to repeat this k amount of times. So we are going to find the minimum value and its index in the array, replace the minimum value with itself multiplied by our multiplier, and then just simply return our updated array. To find the minimum value efficiently, we'll loop through the array to find the smallest element and keep track of the index of the first occurrence of that minimum. So let's go ahead and jump into our code. But first, I'll write down the steps. So it's 3 simple steps. We're going to have a helper array that's going to simply hold our minimums and their positions. We'll perform k amount of operations where we find the minimum value and its index and replace the minimum value with its multiply value. And then we can call to our helper function to do that. So let's go ahead and do this. So to start our temp array, it's going to be an integer array, but it's going to be a only of length 2. So we're going to have a new int of length 2 because it's simply going to store the value and then the position. Next, we're going to perform our k amount of operations. So for each integer I is equal to 0, as long as I is less than k, I can increment. And step 1, we'll find our minimum value. So array is going to be equal to get our minimum of nums, and that is our helper function. So it's going to find the minimum value in our nums array. Then all we have to do is update our nums of our array of 1 is going to be equal to array of 0 times our multiplier. So this is simply going to take our array and take the 0 value, which is going to be the actual value of the element, and multiply it by the multiplier. Array of 1 is going to be the position of the value. So each time we call to our array is equal to get min, it's going to update the values, constantly finding the new minimums and updating our integer array with length 2. After that for loops breaks, meaning we completed the k amount of operations, we can simply return our nums array since we are updating it in that array. Next thing we're going to do is define our helper function. So our helper function is going to be a private. It's going to return an integer array because we're going to be updating our array ARR. It's called get minimum, and it's going to receive an integer array nums. So in this helper function, we are first going to store our minimum value and store the index of that minimum value. So we're going to say integer min is going to be equal to integer dot max value. The reason we're taking the max value is because no matter what, every number is going to be smaller than this one. And then we're going to have our integer index is going to be equal to 0. So we're going to traverse our array and find the minimum values. So for each integer I is equal to 0, as long as I is less than nums dot length, I will increment. And we'll say if our nums of I is less than our current minimum that we've identified, we can update the minimum to equal to nums of I and update our index to be equal to I, because that's the position of the number we're looking at. After we go through our entire nums array and find the new minimum, we can return our new integer array, and it's going to consist of the minimum and the index, and that's it. So if we run this program, passes our test cases, and if we submit it, it will pass all solutions. Thank you, and follow for more daily LeetCode solutions.